Good afternoon, Carl Deffenbaugh joining you here on the Wisconsin Live Desk as we get you ready to go for the next hour here as the news happens here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or around the rest of the region, the rest of the country. We'll check in and get you there as things are happening in the moment. We give you a live look at downtown Milwaukee on not so lovely Thursday afternoon, we can tell you that, but it's turning around for the weekend, and maybe we'll get a check of the weather as well from our weather experts back there, preparing you for the sun to return to our part of the country. Over at the U.S. Senate, things are proceeding on the Senate floor. We'll try to check in there. Over in Minnesota, our neighbors to the west, this just popped up on one of our feeds. Maybe we can bring in our producer in the booth, Delaney Reed. Delaney, you mentioned this is dealing with farmers in the state of Minnesota. Is that correct?
Yeah, Carl, farmers in Minnesota are preparing for cuts from DOGE.
All right. Well, we will hear a little bit from them just momentarily if that's still going on. We're going to start, though, as we catch the tail end of, hopefully not the tail end, in fact, this has been going on for a bit. President Donald Trump hosting another cabinet meeting at the White House. You're seeing Doug Burgum, the former governor of North Dakota there, speaking. Let's listen in to the cabinet meeting. It's been going around the different cabinet secretaries throughout this meeting, including hearing from the president himself on the issues the administration is tackling. Let's listen in.
The Biden administration was restricting supply. You're increasing supply. When you increase supply, then prices start to come down. And we have a huge opportunity to do this. Just in interior alone, there's 500 million acres of surface, 700 million acres of subsurface, and 2.5 billion acres of offshore. And the Biden administration was trying to restrict this so that you couldn't get a timber lease, you couldn't cut a tree, you couldn't graze a cow, you couldn't develop oil and gas minerals, and you couldn't develop the critical minerals we need for our technology, for our defense industries, and to be able to help us win the AI arms race against China. So we're opening up this, and with your executive orders and your work, we've on Tuesday, historic day, you ended the war on beautiful clean coal, which has been going on since Obama took office. China gets 60% of their electricity from coal. They're opening up they've opened up 94 gigawatts of coal in the last year as part of this AI arms race. 94 gigawatts, that's enough for 94 Denvers to be able to, 1 gigawatt per metro area like that. It's unheard of. So what we have an opportunity under your leadership to come back. The Gulf of America had its first offshore lease sale, which is scheduled for later this year, but that was, the industry loved that because we're now, the Gulf of America is now open for business again. And there's as much as 7 billion barrels of oil accessible now. They've increased the upside of what they think that is. On the coal front, the estimate is the financial value of the coal in America is $8 trillion. That was an asset on the balance sheet that we've now being put back on again. And of course in Alaska, with your separate executive orders to unleash Alaska energy between ANWR, the North Slope, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve Alaska, all of those, we've reversed Biden decision. Those are all open for business again. And all of this is leading to the investment coming to America. The smart money is coming to the U.S. That's why we've got trillions of dollars of investment that are showing up at the door, because they know if they're going to do manufacturing here, there's going to be energy to power their plants. And so, again, thank you for your leadership and thank you for everything you're doing.
Very good. Thank you. Marco?
Well, Mr. President, one of the most important things I believe you'll achieve in your presidency is reordering the world in a proper way. For 31 years, more than 31 years now, multiple administrations have allowed the Chinese to deindustrialize this country, to take away jobs and factories and the pillars of our national strength. And what you're doing now, I think, is a great service to our country, but ultimately to the world. And I want to congratulate you and your team that's working on that, because that has extraordinary geopolitical implications, as you see from all these other countries that are now coming here and wanting to join something that actually makes it's crazy to allow these. I mean, basically, we lived in a world where Chinese companies can do whatever they want in America, but our companies cannot do anything over there unless they allow it, and even then they steal our stuff and reverse engineer it. So just reordering all of that has dramatic implications on peace and security of the world, so we thank you. An important meeting, thanks to you, is going to happen on Saturday for the first time in a long time. There'll be direct talks between Ambassador Woodcoff and a top-level leader in Iran. We hope that'll lead to peace. You've been very clear what Iran is never going to have is a nuclear weapon, and I think that's what led to this meeting, and we'll wait for him to come back from it, and we're hopeful about that. I would also say that we are receiving, and I think Department of Homeland Security can confirm this historic cooperation from countries all over the world. Number one, in taking back their citizens. Every country in the world has to take back people that are illegally in another country. And we have countries that refuse to do it or will kind of ignore our calls. All of them are doing it. The ones that are not are paying a price. And we've also found cooperation in other countries that are willing to take some of these people, some very dangerous criminals. I know the president of El Salvador will be here next week, has really been a good friend of the United States in that regard. These are some of the worst people you'll ever encounter, and Pam knows this, and Christy knows this from the work they're doing. You know, and one last point I want to make, Mr. President, and again, it's under your leadership, it's actually under your executive order. If you come to this country as a student, we expect you to go to class and study and get a degree. If you come here to like vandalize a library, take over a campus, and do all kinds of crazy things, you know, we're going to get rid of these people. And we're going to continue to do it. So when we identify lunatics like these, we take away their student visa. No one's entitled to a student visa. The press covers student visas like there's some sort of birthright. No, a student visa is like me inviting you into my home. If you come into my home and put all kinds of crap on my couch, I'm going to kick you out of my house. And so, you know, that's what we're doing with our country, thanks to the president. And last but not least, very important development this week, but both Pam and I were very excited. The finest higher education institution in the United States, the University of Florida, is also now the national champions in basketball, and we hope you'll host them here soon, Mr. President. Go Gators.
They're coming. They're coming. They're coming very soon. Well, thank you very much. You're really doing a great job. We appreciate it. Any question?
Mr. President, can you give us a reaction to today's stock market drop, and also give us a sense of the next steps with China?
Well, I haven't seen it because I've been here for 2.5 hours, so I'll be seeing it. I think Scott went out. Scott, you want to have a statement on that?
Sure. Look, the up 2, down 1 is not a bad ratio, or up 10, down 5. And I think as we have talked about, as we go through the queue and settle with these countries who are going to bring us their best offers, we will end up in a place of great certainty over the next 90 days on tariffs. We had very good inflation numbers today. Oil's down. We had a successful bond market, so I don't see anything unusual today.
And next steps for China, sir?
Well, we'll see what happens with China. We would love to be able to work a deal. They've really taken advantage of our country for a long period of time. They've ripped us off beyond anybody, nobody. How people stood for it, sitting in my position, is not even believable. And we're talking about many presidents, not just a couple. But they did, and all we're doing is putting it back in shape. We're resetting the table. And I'm sure that we'll be able to get along very well. I have great respect for President Xi. He's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time. And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
Mr. President, China retaliated today by reducing the number of American films that can be shown there. What's your reaction to them now targeting cultural exports from the United States?
I think I've heard of worse things. Yes, please.
Also on China, the Ukrainians say they have evidence that Chinese soldiers have been found fighting for the Russians in Ukraine. Can the U.S. verify this? And if so, what does the U.S. plan on doing to China to counteract that?
We'll look into it, but I think beyond that, we're really looking to get that war stopped. They're losing 2,500 and even more than that young people a week. They're Russian and they're Ukrainian. They're not American, but they're people. And we're seeing if we can get it stopped. And I think we're making progress. I appreciate the ballerina who was released. It was at the request of a very good friend of all of ours, actually. Dana White called me and he said it's the friend or the relationship of one of the fighters for UFC or one of the fighters. And Dana's an incredible guy, and we spoke to President Putin about it, and they made a deal. They released the young ballerina, and she is now out, and that was good, so we appreciate that. We hope that we're going to be able to make a deal relatively soon with Russia and Ukraine to stop the fighting. It's so senseless. It's such a horrible thing. It would have never happened if I were president, but it did happen, and we were given that card and I think we're going to get it. I think we're going to get it stopped. Got to get going. We got to get it. We have to move it faster. Likewise with the hostages, we're making progress. We, there's 59 hostages, but only 24 of them are living, and that's the way it's been presented to me by the mothers of some of the dead, mothers and fathers of some of the dead hostages, and they want the bodies of their baby, as they say, their baby, their young boys. They want them back as much as if they were alive. It's amazing, because when I met the hostages 2 weeks ago here, I couldn't believe what they had to go through, by the way. But when I met them, they said, yeah, there's 59, but 24 are living. And they actually consider, I guess if you're a parent, you do consider it this way, that the remainder who are dead, the 24 that are alive, the remainder that are dead, they want them back just as much as they would want them back if they were alive. It's really pretty amazing and pretty sad. So we're getting close to getting them back. We have a lot came back. A lot of people are very grateful. Some came back in pretty bad shape. Some came back, they're okay. I think they're going to be scarred mentally for a long time, because if you sit down and talk to them, as I have, what they went through is incredible. But we're making progress. We're dealing with Israel. We're dealing with Hamas, and it's a nasty grip.
Mr. President, so how close are you to the first country coming to actually make a deal with the United States over tariffs? Is it days, months?
Well, I think it's very close, but we have to have a deal that we like. We don't want a deal that's going to be a bad deal, or I could make every deal in one day if I wanted to. I could do this in one day. I could just say, here's what we'll do. And I was saying to the people before, to Scott, mostly to Scott and Howard, and some of the other people that work with us on the negotiations. We have a lot of law firms that have paid me a lot of money in the form of legal fees. We're going to probably use those firms to, if we can, I think we can. I'll make a contribution to the country, but they're great firms. They're the best firms, the biggest, and really the most prestigious. And we may be using them to help you guys out, because you're going to need a lot of lawyers. And I'm not sure Pam's going to be happy if I say, can you send over about 200 lawyers that work on trade? She's working on criminal stuff, and I think that's going to be her focus more than anything else. So we'll find out if we can do that. But we have a lot of lawyers that you've been reading about, where they paid $100 million a firm on average. Now we have the final 4 or 5 are at $125 million. So I have a lot of legal fees I could give to you people, and we might as well use them. Hopefully I won't need that many legal fees or that much. I may. Who knows? After it ends, after we leave, maybe I'll need it. But if I do, it's not going to be very pleasant. So I think we're going to try to use these very prestigious firms to help us out with the trade, because we have a lot of countries. But we want to make deals that are proper for the United States, not just we can make deals easily. We want to make them proper.
Mr. President, if you aren't able to reach the deals that you want to see at the end of the 90 days, will you put those higher tariffs in place, or will you extend? Well,
that's what would happen. I mean, if we can't make the deal that we want to make, or we have to make, or that's good for both parties, it's got to be good for both parties. And then we go back to where we were.
Go back to the numbers that you announced last week.
I think so.
You wouldn't extend the pause?
Yeah. We'll have to see what happens at that time.
Thank you, Mr. President. You said yesterday you were considering some exceptions for companies. Can you talk about what you're considering? And then also on the reciprocal tariffs, so they'd be substantially lower. Is the same math formula going to be used, or is that tossed out?
I'm not considering now for any country or company, but it's possible that I would. But I'm not. We don't have that situation right now. People understand where we are, what we're going to do. But it could happen. It's called flexibility. You have to have certain flexibility.
What are you planning on using the money that you're gaining from revenue through the tariffs on?
Paying down national debt, reducing taxes, creating good budgets, helping Christie with the border and all of the other things. I built hundreds of miles of wall, as people now understand, 571 miles of border wall in the first administration. But we're going to beef it up, and we're going to add more. And the numbers are incredible. Really, the numbers are what's taken place. We had great numbers, but these numbers are topping my last administration. And Christie and Tom Homan have done an amazing job. But it's an expensive process. This weekend, where they used to have hundreds of thousands of people standing there pouring through the border in Tijuana, Mexico, this weekend they had nobody. You had a man sweeping this massive piece of concrete, which is, the area where they said massive. And I've looked at that during the Biden administration. You couldn't see a piece of that concrete. There were so many people on it. You couldn't, if you had helicopter shots, you couldn't see concrete. Now, this weekend, you had nobody there but a man with a broom sweeping it and cleaning it up. Pretty amazing. It's really an amazing job. But it will be used for that. It'll be used for a lot of things. It'll be used by the Department of Justice for doing a great job. Pam is doing a fantastic job. So it's going to be used for a lot of different things.
Mr. President, on the 10% tariff, is that a basement? Is that the
It's a baseline.
Can countries negotiate that to bring that?
It depends on what they're adding. Some countries we have massive deficits with, or they have big surpluses with us, and others it's not that way. So it depends. That's why it's really they're all different. Every country is different. Some have certain advantages that others don't have, and certain things. We have China has a surplus of $1 trillion. I mean, the numbers are crazy. And others have basically no surpluses. We have some that are pretty even, but they hurt us in other ways, and we just want to get that taken care of. So everyone is a little bit different.
As you're listening to President Donald Trump there, along with members of his cabinet answering questions and giving updates from reporters and giving updates to the president there, you hear a lot of the discussions of the ongoing trade war, specifically now with China, following the Trump administration's lowering of tariff rates against most of the other countries in the world that had faced, in some cases, steep tariffs. We can tell you that the stock market has responded the other direction today after the up and down announcements from the White House and some clarifications from the administration about just how steep those tariffs against China will be. Yesterday saw historic gains after the announcement of that 90-day pause against most countries' tariff rates. But so far today, the Dow Jones Industrial down almost 3 points. The S&P 500 had fallen at 1.5% on the day today, giving back much of those gains as the White House clarified that Chinese goods, specifically imports from China, will be tariffed at a 145% rate. Yesterday, the White House had said 125%. Now, a day later, clarifying that would be actually 145% as this trade war really hones in between China and the U.S. specifically. We're going to take a short break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. On the other side of things, we have our reporter Jason Calvi standing by. He just heard from Attorney General Josh Kaul today on National Crime Victims' Rights Week, and we're going to get a report from Jason on what the Attorney General here in Wisconsin had to say, the status of crime here in the city of Milwaukee and across the state, when we check in with Jason on the other side of this break on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, Carl Defenbaugh here, joining you once again from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, on the Wisconsin Live Desk, taking you around the news as it happens. The man just right there over my, wait, which shoulder is that? Wait, Jason, there you go. Hey, my right shoulder. Jason Calvi standing by as we check in with him in downtown Milwaukee there. I believe you're up and down King Drive at the Sojourner Family Peace Center. Jason, tell us what you were covering today for us here at Fox 6 in Milwaukee that kind of speaks to a national effort. And you heard from the Attorney General of Wisconsin today, Josh Kaul. Take it away, Mr. Calvi from outside Sojourner Family Peace Center.
Hey, Carl. Yeah, the Attorney General is coming here. He is asking for the state legislature to provide more funding for for services to crime victims. So he's asking for the state legislature in the next budget to pump $67.8 million into these services. And the reason why he says that money is needed from the state is because there's been decreasing money from the federal government over recent administrations, not just right now, but over the past budget, which was passed under President Biden last year. There's been cuts over the years, including with the first Trump administration, to the Victims of Crime Act provides federal funding to states to help them with community organizations like this one here, Sojourner's Family Peace Center, which helps victims of crime. Domestic violence victims come here to get counseling, to get support. They have a shelter here that provides a safe place for people that are escaping from domestic violence to come here and get that help, that support that they need. And here at the center, over the last few months, they've had to, or since last year really, they've had to cut positions. So they've, over all the different services they provided here, they've cut 10 positions. Now, a lot of times that's through attrition, so if somebody leaves, they don't fill that vacancy. But 10 positions here, they say they're having to do more with less because they're because of these victims, the Victims of Crime Act money that comes to the state, then comes to these local organizations, has been decreasing over the years. They said they're out some hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that meant these 10 positions they're not filling here. That means cuts to things like the hotline. Now, they're still providing the same services, but each of those departments is seeing a little bit of a reduction as well here, Carl.
And certainly you can imagine how that impacts actual lives, right? A domestic violence survivor trying to get the help, if they have to wait in line or if they have to wait longer to get those services, you can imagine what that's like. I think that's probably important to clarify, Jason, because obviously you're a political reporter. You know how much of the topics and conversations, both nationally and here in Wisconsin recently, have been about cuts specifically since the second term of this Trump administration took over. But you're saying this actually goes back years across different administrations when it comes to the shrinking of that federal funding and what organizations like Sojourner have had to deal with here in Wisconsin?
That's right. Yeah, the Attorney General said it went back to the first. You know, we saw these trend lines going down under the first Trump administration, under the Biden administration, and so you know they're saying 70% cut from what they did, but that includes, see, what the Attorney General was doing was he had this Victims of Crime Act money from the federal government. That was one pot of the money that was coming in to help victim services here in Wisconsin. But he was also also using some of the American Rescue Act money, the ARPA money that came under the Biden administration. He was using some of that money for these services. So now that the ARPA money is run dry, and because of the trend lines down for the Victims of Crime Act funding as well at the national level over the last few years, he's asking now for the state to fill the gap between what the state used to put in with all that federal money. He's asking for the state now to fill the gap for this funding that goes to crime victim services. We heard from the Hmong community organization that helps victims of domestic violence, and they told us they went from 10 staff members down to 5. So you're seeing at the small organizations a 50% cut. You're seeing here at Sojourners, they've had the 10 positions. It's a much larger organization here, but they've had 10 positions they haven't filled because of these trend lines down for funding at the federal level for victims of crime over the last few years.
It's interesting to hear, and certainly highlighting two of those organizations there in Sojourner and the Hmong group working with domestic violence survivors and victims of domestic violence. What other organizations are affected by this? What else did you hear from the AG in terms of how wide-ranging those cuts and that impact can be based on that lack of funding?
Right. So for this budget year, the state government gave $109 organizations across Wisconsin this Victims of Crime Act funding. So if you want to, I don't know, Mike, if you can zoom in, photojournalist Mike, zoom in here. This is a map that the Attorney General's office provided, and it shows where the 109 grants were given. So you can see, Milwaukee, obviously the largest city in the state of Wisconsin, getting the largest number of groups here getting that state funding. Green Bay, Madison, but really it goes all across the state, rural areas, and the cities as well, getting this money from the state of Wisconsin. 109 organizations in this fiscal year. So that's the impact that we're talking about. We're talking about small organizations like that Hmong organization, talking about a large organization like Sojourners that are getting this money. It's from the state government, but the original pot of money comes from the federal government to the states. The states then give it to the local organizations that are doing that work to help those victims. Again, like I talked about, somebody is sexually assaulted. They might come here to get help, to get counseling. And what we heard from one of the organizations here in Milwaukee is that it's not just a 15-minute discussion. It's not just a 15-minute counseling session that's going to help these victims. They might need that help, that support, that counseling over the course maybe of years.
I'm sure as you're doing your reporting today, Jason, it's not just the Attorney General kind of highlighting this and a call to action to continue funding that one program, but were there other possible solutions given that the AG is looking into or other organizations looking into to cover those gaps in funding and other sources that they might try to tap into?
Yeah. So here at Sojourners, they do rely on those government funds, those grants from the federal government, state government coming in to help support their mission. But they also have private donors. So they have corporations, they have foundations that are also wanting to really partner with Sojourners in that important work of helping domestic violence victims to find that healing, that support that they might need in that time of transition. So they have always been getting private money as well, private grants, private donations. So that work continues. But what we're seeing is these organizations that do rely so much on federal funding as well. In Milwaukee, they're talking about partnering together to have that one common voice to go then to their state legislators and say, hey, these are very important works that are being done in communities across the state. Can you please up and fill in the gap from the federal funding? Can you fill it in with state money now?
Yeah, we know certainly the need is very real here in Milwaukee, across the state of Wisconsin, as you showed us, and I'm sure in other states as well, impacted by that reduction in funding. Jason Calvey reporting for us outside of Sojourner Family Peace. We'll let you get back to your work today, and you can look for this story later on Fox Local. Jason, thank you very much for joining us here.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
We are going to continue to whip around what we can find for you here on the Wisconsin Live Desk as I pop back up the president once again speaking from the Oval Office not the Oval Office, the White House there as he continues his cabinet meeting with his different secretaries taking answers from reporters. Let's see what the president is chatting about now.
The good news is we're very vibrant and we're going to get it back fast. We already have. Look, we're making $2 billion a day now, and during Biden we were losing $3 billion a day. Biden was a disaster. He was the worst president in the history of our country. And to me, worse than that, because the money you can make if you have the right guy in this position, worse than that was what they did on the border. By allowing the jails of the world, not South America, all over the world, to be opened up so that we take everybody from Africa, Asia, South America, Europe, the bad ones. They opened up their jails and they dumped them in the United States. And now this beautiful young woman who seems to be, boy, she loves what she does, though. I think she loves what she does because she's a patriot. She hates to see it. And Tom and all the people. But for us to spend, hundreds of billions of dollars, this is just, I don't know. They either hated the country. Who would do this? Who would want millions of people to pour through an open border? We have no idea who the hell they are, and just walk right through. And half of them, whether you like it or not, you could look at them and you could say, they are not going to help us. These are some rough people. But they'd empty out their jails, and they'd empty out their mental institutions, insane asylums, and they let them into the United States of America. And inflation we can fix, and all of the other things we can fix. We'll get it going. But this is something, It's such a horrible thing, and it's really hard. You know, we have to do deportations. Now we're doing self-deportation. We're coming up with all sorts of ideas. And they must have known it's not going to work out well. And, you know, we want people to come into our country, by the way. We need them badly for the jobs. But we want them to come in legally. They have to come in legally. They have to show that they can love our country. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's the President of the United States and members of his cabinet taking questions from the media following their cabinet meeting, covering a range of topics. You heard the nuclear weapons possibly that Iran is looking for. The U.S. wants to limit ever the production of that. One of the topics, certainly tariffs. A number of the questions we heard from the reporters there, the impact as we give you a live look at the Dow Jones Industrial today. Stocks have gone back in the red following yesterday's very pointed rise after the administration announced a 90-day pause in tariffs. They have gone back the other direction now, as specifically the tariffs against China are now up to 145%, up from what was initially reported to be 125% initially. It's going to be up to 145%. Let's get you out to another location right now here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. This is actually a live look at Reagan National Airport in D.C., something happening in the moment that we want to tell you about right now, as I try to get information from our Fox affiliate in Washington, D.C. This just happened moments ago, but apparently two planes have collided. Their wings clipped each other at Reagan National Airport. DCA is the call sign for that airport in our nation's capital. This is according to members of Congress who actually were on board that plane, including New Jersey Representative Josh Gottheimer, who posted about this, saying, quote, "While waiting to take off on the runway at DCA just now, another plane struck our wing. Thankfully, everyone is safe." And now that is, of course, the most important part of that message. Thankfully, everyone is safe, because as we know, in recent history at Reagan National, that was the site of that horrific plane crash over the Potomac River. American Airlines jet on landing hit a military Black Hawk helicopter, killing all 67 people on board both of those aircraft, the plane and the helicopter, as it went into the Potomac River. This, thankfully, does not sound like it is anything close to that, but still a scary scene for anyone on board those planes, including, as it turns out, a congressman like a representative from New Jersey, saying that as they were about to take off on the runway at Reagan National, a plane clipped their wing. And we are trying to work on some other images to get you here, including a video from outside of the window of this plane, someone sitting in that plane. Tom Fitzgerald from our Fox affiliate in D.C. also reporting that two planes apparently clipped wings while taxiing. The congressman that I just referenced there, the New Jersey representative, said thankfully everyone at Reagan National is safe. We're going to take another break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. We'll update you as the information comes in from D.C. and as the response to the president's meeting with his cabinet continues as well. We'll bring you the latest as it happens here in Wisconsin and across the country on the Wisconsin Live Desk.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Hey, Carl Deffenbaugh here at the Wisconsin Live Desk. We want to get you back out from here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to our nation's capital for something that just happened on the tarmac of Reagan National Airport in D.C. Two planes collided on the tarmac. We do have some more information that just came in, a couple different statements, one from the FAA on this, one from the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority. That statement, perhaps the most important, it says both aircraft have returned to gates, no injuries reported in this case. And also, as you're seeing some of the planes still moving around the tarmac at Reagan, no effect on flight operations at Reagan National Airport. That is from the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority statement. We also have a statement from the FAA on this incident. It was, again, an American Airlines flight. The wingtip of an American Airlines plane hit another American Airlines plane on the taxiway at Reagan. This happened about 12:45 local time today, so that would be Eastern time, so 11:45 for us out here in Milwaukee, so just about an hour and a half old at this point. The flights, one of them was headed to Charleston in South Carolina. The other was going to JFK Airport in New York City. The FAA is going to be investigating this, but any questions should go to the airline. The good news, both from that one member of Congress who was on board one of those planes, as well as backed up by the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority statement, no injuries reported as the wingtip of one American plane hit another American plane. Both of those aircraft have gotten back to the gates at Reagan at National, and not exactly the day that passengers, the pilots on board either of those planes were expecting. We can certainly say that, but given especially what was in the news at the end of January, nothing to that degree at National Airport in our nation's capital today. As we try to give you a live look around the area on the news as it's happening here at the Wisconsin Live Desk, a beautiful shot of downtown Milwaukee, even if the weather isn't necessarily complying today. You're seeing the clouds over downtown. We're getting through the worst of it here, as we are expecting plenty of sunshine and beautiful weather for the weekend. Warm up as well. That is the very good news. And let me pop up something else for you here. We can switch things over very quickly to a look at the stock market, down almost 3% today on the Dow Jones Industrial. That's as the result of the White House clarifying just how drastic some of the tariffs against Chinese imports to America will be. After all the gains yesterday, the administration announcing a temporary pause, a 90-day pause on most tariffs against foreign countries, a baseline of 10%, so still higher than it was before the president announced these sweeping tariffs, but not the drastic numbers against most countries like the European Union or Vietnam, other places, trading partners across the world, Canada and Mexico. All of that is now tied up into a 90-day pause, except when it comes to China. And this has been back and forth between Chinese officials raising their tariff rates in retaliation to what the U.S. is doing, the U.S. then raising their rates again and again in retaliation to the Chinese response. The White House clarified that it'll actually be a 105% rate against Chinese goods coming into the country. Yesterday, with that announcement of the mostly pause, they had raised the rate against Chinese goods to 125%, but instead that actually is going to go up to 145%. And as you can see, stocks across the board, including the Dow Jones here, are responding to that today, down more than 1,200 points, more than 3% right now in trading just past 2 o'clock Eastern time if you were out there on the trading floor in New York City. We can also pop this up for you. Maybe we can get our producer in the booth, Delaney Reed, to tell us what we're looking at. This is the joy of the Wisconsin Live Desk. We can join in on pretty much any press conference as it happens, just trying to figure out what exactly this is as I do my best, Delaney, to read the flag behind there. Obviously the U.S. flag, but which exact flag that is on the right. Do you know any idea what this is that we're checking out here, Delaney?
Hey, Carl, this is expected to be a State Department briefing, but I'll figure out some more information.
Gotcha. We'll try to figure that out for you. We did hear momentarily from Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, who was just in that cabinet meeting with the President of the United States. But we'll try to get you some information as soon as the officials, whether there is the Secretary of State Marco Rubio or another member of the State Department stepping to that podium, we'll hear what they're discussing on this Thursday afternoon. One other thing I want to mention, if I can try to pull up another camera for you here. Let's see what we got. Where are we going next? This would be the floor of Congress, the U.S. Capitol building. I want to tell you about something that just happened from the U.S. House, and something that President Trump is quite happy about today. The U.S. House, and Republicans leading the way on this, passed a signature issue for their party on the year, approving legislation that would require proof of U.S. citizenship when you register to vote for federal elections. That has been a priority of President Trump and his Republican Party. And in fact, since we're joining you here from the Wisconsin live desk, a Wisconsin Republican, Brian Stile, representative from our part of southeastern Wisconsin, chairs the committee that handles election-related legislation, and said during arguments about this Thursday, the bill is meant to, quote, restore Americans' confidence in our elections and also try to prevent non-citizens from voting. Now, as you can imagine, Democrats lined up against the bill, warning this would risk disenfranchising millions of Americans who do not have ready access to the proper documentation, including someone married or possibly divorced women who have changed their names. This could be a potential issue for them. Democratic Representative Joe Morell of New York said the legislation would, quote, force Americans into a paperwork nightmare. Now, the fate of this bill, it makes it through the House, led by Representative Brian Stile and others from the Wisconsin Republican delegation. Its fate in the Senate, though, is uncertain. Republicans do have control of that chamber as of last fall's election, and they have a narrow majority, but it falls well short of the 60 votes it would need to overcome a filibuster. So it remains to be seen if this will, in fact, go into effect. But House Republicans and the president quite happy with at least progress on one of their top election-related priorities, a House bill led by Republicans passing on a party-line vote one of the signature issues that would require proof of U.S. citizenship when registering to vote for U.S. elections. We're going to take another break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk. A lot happening on this day, both in the nation's capital and here in Wisconsin, or with the ties in between as well. And we'll get another check of things as Secretary Rubio is supposed to step to that podium I mentioned, a meeting with the Finnish foreign minister, actually, at the Department of State. That's what we had coming up for you there on that one channel. We'll check what else we find for you, including some of the news happening here in Milwaukee. Unfortunately, a deadly crash in Milwaukee very early this morning. One of our reporters, Stephanie Quirk, has been doing some work on this, trying to dig into a unfortunately horrific situation on the interstate on I-43 this morning in the Milwaukee metro area. We'll get word on that hopefully here in the last 15 minutes we have for you on the Wisconsin Live Desk. For now, though, a quick break. I'll see you on the other side.
This is the Wisconsin Live Desk.
Good afternoon, Carl Effenbaugh joining you here, 1:16 the time here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as we check in from the Wisconsin Live Desk once again, giving you a shot at downtown Milwaukee on this cloudy and cool Thursday, though the weather is going to change, thankfully, in a positive way for the weekend ahead. We'll also give you a live look at the traffic map here in the Milwaukee metro area, which we can tell you is quite a bit different than what we saw for much of the morning commute this morning. That is the result of a deadly crash that we covered live on our morning show today that shut down parts of 43 north of downtown Milwaukee for hours and led to major delays, unfortunately because the death of a woman in her 70s this morning. And I want to now bring in our reporter on the scene today on this story, Stephanie Quirk, joining us live from one of the overpasses over I-43 behind you there, Steph. And as I get your microphone up here, take us through some of the situation, because this is something that happened as we were on the air this morning on Fox 6, and we were trying to piece together exactly what happened. We knew there was a crash, we knew there was a woman died, but the actual circumstances of this are really quite tragic.
Yeah, tragic, absolutely. It was right here, Carl, to I-43 northbound near North Avenue. Around early this morning at 4 a.m., we're told 4 a.m., is the time when this crash happened. So the fatal striking occurred around 4:30, but we're told that the 76-year-old woman was hit by a suspected drunk driver and impaired driver, and we just actually got an update from the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office that criminal charges have been referred against the suspect in this case, who is a 25-year-old man from Milwaukee. We're working to learn details overall just about, the circumstances surrounding this, but we're told by the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office that the woman appeared to be going to the scene of a different crash, and when she got out of her car on the freeway, she was hit by that suspected impaired driver, which is just so tragic and unfortunate. And unfortunately, these are the things that can happen as a result of impaired driving. I actually am in contact with a family member of the victim too, Carl.
When we were trying to piece things together in the moment on the fly this morning, it was interesting to break down the information from the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, Steph, because it sounded like there was a separate crash. That was that first one you mentioned at 4 o'clock. This woman actually drives up to the scene because she, we believe, is related to someone in that first crash. And then when she gets out of the car, that's when she's hit in the second one. Am I piecing that together correctly?
You're correct. Yeah, that's correct, Carl. That's what we heard from a spokesperson from Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, which is just absolutely tragic. She got out of her car, it appears. That's what deputies say. And when she did that to go to this other crash where it appears she was related to somebody who was impacted by that first crash, which was different, she was then hit. So you just, your heart breaks for the family.
Absolutely, especially if they were already dealing with a difficult morning because of that first crash. I'm sure a lot of things to take away from this situation for others, Stephanie, and that's kind of what you're focused on today. First and foremost, don't drive while you're intoxicated. That would be the message for that second driver in this case, and I'm sure that's what a lot of the story focuses on. But also maybe the dangers of getting out of your car when you're on the freeway system. As you can see behind you, that's a major construction zone as well, so there's a lot of distractions for drivers around there for what that woman got out to then unfortunately happened to her.
Absolutely, yes. And, we talk about it in the newsroom, we talk about it all the time, the construction going on here. Just driving safe, and it goes down to 2 lanes, and just you don't really know when things are going to change, right? And just you gotta no distracted driving on the road is important, but in a case like this too, where construction's around and then somebody is driving while apparently intoxicated too, you just never know, right? So I think that, like you said, this is unfortunately, this can be the outcome of of getting behind the wheel when you should not be driving, and it's tragic. The family member I spoke with, actually, yes, he's just, yeah, it's tragic.
We're seeing the traffic moving now. We can tell you it was quite a different scene this morning when all of the northbound lanes on 43 there near North Avenue were shut down. Traffic was diverted off of that, and honestly, it was backed up for miles, even south of Milwaukee, all the way to the airport, to give you a sense of just how long those backups lasted during the morning commute as a result. Steph, when it comes to the rest of what you're trying to track down today, of course, in contact with the family of that woman, what else are you interested in hearing, either from law enforcement or from those family members the rest of the day before we see your reporting tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been reaching out to lots of groups, organizations that speak out against drunk driving, impaired driving, in hopes to curb the amount of deaths that happen every single year as a result of this. So speaking to that, and also just, making sure that you are safe when you get behind the wheel. I know there was people on the way to work. This was when people were commuting, so it's just, you never know until it happens to you. And you don't want to put other people at risk on the road. So I think that's one angle we're trying to pursue as well. Obviously, with those criminal charges being referred to the district attorney's office, we'll see all of that come to light in the coming days. I know that the 25-year-old man in this case is in custody at this time. Of course, we don't know the details of his name, but we'll be sure to learn that in the next few days, I'm assuming.
And the extent of the charges as well, although with an elderly woman killed in this early morning crash on 43, certainly to be serious charges to come. Stephanie Quirk, thank you very much. We'll let you get back to your work there, covering, unfortunately, a tragic story for one family here in Milwaukee on this Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.
As we get ready for another break here on the Wisconsin Live Desk, we'll take you back to Reagan National out in D.C. for an update on that accident that happened between two planes on the tarmac. No injuries, that is the good news here. But we'll get word from one of the congressmen who was actually on board one of the planes when it was clipped. We'll have that for you on the other side of this break on the Wisconsin Live Desk. This is the Wisconsin Live Desk. Good afternoon. Carl Leffenbaugh back with you on the Wisconsin Live Desk as we get you going here on a Thursday afternoon. Just a couple minutes left in our program, but a couple things we do want to hit, including some breaking news that just came across the Associated Press wires moments ago related to the White House. The U.S. ambassador to Ukraine is stepping down, and that comes at a time when peace talks between the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine over the Russia-Ukraine war are quite uncertain, to say the least. This will be the departure of Bridget Brinks after nearly 3 years spent in Kyiv. Will come at a time of uncertainty with the Trump administration trying to broker a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine. The State Department said on this Thursday that Brink will be leaving her post, although not immediately clear exactly when she would depart. She did assume that post, ambassador to Ukraine, under former President Joe Biden's administration, and she'd been a staunch advocate for U.S. military assistance to Ukraine. Her resignation had been expected for some time under a new administration, but it remains to be seen exactly how long Bridget Brinks will stay on as U.S. ambassador to Ukraine at a really pivotal time for that position and for those negotiations. In the meantime, we want to take you back out to Reagan National, an update I mentioned on what happened on the tarmac this morning at Reagan as we give you a live look. Operations back to normal at one of the airports in our nation's capital, but that is after something that happened as we pull up Tagboard, is where we can bring you social media posts from around the country, anyone who posts, including representatives like Congressman Nick LaLotta, who has this to say: serving in Congress has come with some once-in-a-lifetime experiences, like just now while stationary on the runway at DCA, that's Reagan, another plane just bumped into our wing, heading back to the gate, but thankfully everyone is okay. And apparently a fellow representative was handing out grapes to try to appease some of the worried travelers out there. That is the good news. Clipped, yes, but nothing more serious than that, as we know that both planes made it back to the terminals, and operations at Reagan have continued as normal the rest of this Thursday. I believe Delaney Reed back there in the booth, our producer for the Wisconsin Live Desk, you had another post to share with us as well, something else. I'm sure this was all the talk in D.C.
Yeah, we have a second post from another representative in D.C. who was also on the plane, saying while waiting to take off on the runway at DCA just now, another plane struck our wing. Everyone is okay though.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's the good news. New Jersey Representative Josh Gottheimer there also on that plane. Certainly not what anyone expected to see or feel out their window when they were supposed to be leaving. One plane going to Charleston, I believe, North Carolina or South Carolina, and another on its way to JFK in New York. We did get word from some of the officials out there, including the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority. No injuries to report. Both aircraft went back to their gates. People had to figure out other flights, but thankfully nothing worse than that. Well, that's going to do it for another edition of the Wisconsin Live Desk, taking you all the way to the White House for the Trump cabinet meeting. The news of the day here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, when it comes to the Wisconsin Attorney General joining members of Sojourner Family Peace Center here, and